Welcome to our Botanica Ditton Park, Meet the Bees, and I'd like to hand you over to my colleague, John.
Hi, I'm John from Nurture, and we're here on quite a wet day in June to check on the bees which are in the two beehives behind me. As you can see, the hives are very nice looking WBC beehives, and if I quickly show you on the hive itself, you can see the outside parts at the moment on the roof here, and as I take the roof off, you'll be able to see, as I lift the outer boxes off, you can see the inside parts of the hive. So the bees live and raise their young in the bottom here, and what we're going to do is have a look through and check and see how they're doing. Not keep them open too long because it is a little bit of a rainy day today, but we're going to see how they're doing, see if they need anything, and see what life's like inside the hive for them. A couple of important things you need when you open a beehive. One is your bee suit, which I'm wearing, and I'll flick my hood up now. The second is a hive tool, which is a metal tool used so that you don't damage the boxes when you part them. And then the other thing that you need is smoke, and the smoker has got some dead leaves in it just to provide a little bit of smoke which sedates the bees, and also it moves them out of the way. So if you have bees covering over something and you pop them a little bit of smoke, it moves them out of the way and stops them from getting bumped or crushed by anything. So the honeybees that live inside this hive will be flying out from here up to 3 miles if needed, but because there's so much good forage in the area for them to collect nectar and pollen from, they won't actually need to fly as far as 3 miles, but if they needed to, then they would. They collect nectar, pollen, propolis and water from the environment and bring all of those things back into the hive. The pollen is used to raise young bees, the propolis is used as an antibacterial and to stick things in the hive together and hold them firmly in place, and the water is used for diluting honey and for raising the humidity. And the last thing out of those four, the nectar, is condensed down into honey, and the honey that's collected in these hives is the condensed nectar of the flowers that they forage on within the immediate local area. So I'm going to start by opening up the top of the hive and taking out some of the frames so you can see the bees. You could hear the sticky propolis there coming together. So on the box here you can see the tops of the frames, and as I remove the dummy board, you can see the adult worker bees walking around on there. So all the worker bees and the queen within the hive are both female. You do have male bees called drones, but they're predominantly present during the summer. So on the first frame that's out here, you can see the worker bees walking around, a few bees now flying in the air to investigate what it is we're doing. And in the very middle of the frame here, I can see eggs laid ready for young workers to be born from. On this frame you can see a few things going on. You can see the queen bee walking around, and on her thorax, the blue colour, is where she's been marked with a dot of paint to make her easier to find, and also the colour denotes the year that she was born so that we know how old she is. And you can see that as she walks around, the worker bees clear out of the way for her, because her job is laying eggs, which we've got in the middle of the frame here in these cells, and she doesn't do anything else. So she doesn't clean herself or feed herself or take her own waste outside. She's constantly surrounded by a little court of worker bees who will do everything for her. Elsewhere on the frame you can see honey being stored around the edges, so you can see it being filled up in the cells here, and then once a cell is full of honey they cap it over, and you can see the very new white coloured wax cappings on the cells which are filled up. And also on the edge of the frame you can see the propolis that I mentioned, which is the resin that they collect from tree buds. And propolis is very antibacterial, antimicrobial, antiviral, so it helps with the health of the colony. And you can see as they produce the wax, it's white, and then they varnish it with propolis and it starts to go that yellow colour that we'd normally associate with beeswax. So on this frame here you can see that they've got sealed in honey, the same as they had on the other frame, arranged in an arc around the outside. You can also see that they've got stored pollen at the edge of where the honey is, and you can see the colours of that in there. That also goes all the way around the outside in an arc. And then in the middle, in the biscuit coloured cappings, are where the young bees have been laid as an egg, then they've hatched into a larvae, and then at the end of that process they're sealed over, and inside the sealed cell they pupate just like a butterfly, and at the end of that beginning of the life cycle they'll bite the lid off the cell, come out fully formed and start their working life straight away. The jobs that all these worker bees do is tied to how old they are. So when they're very young they'll be feeding other young bees. As they get a little bit older they'll be guarding the entrance, and as they get a bit older again they become foragers, in the summer living up to around about 6 weeks, so quite a short life for a worker, but a new generation coming up behind each time, with around about an approximate population of about 80,000 in this hive at the moment. And down in the corner of the frame here you can see the bigger, more domed cappings of the drone brood. So you've got the same life cycle in there, but a young male bee waiting to be born. So that's these cells here and the ones along the bottom edge there. That when the worker bee is born out of one of these cells, she from the inside bites the lid off the capping and pushes her way out. As she comes out, she's fully formed. She'll head over to the edge of the frame to eat honey, like these bees around the edges are eating here, and then she'll start her working life straight away. So at the moment they've filled up the 2 boxes where they will live and raise their young and store the honey that they need for the winter time. So the next stage for us now would be to add something called a queen excluder, which stops the queen going up into the top boxes, and then use some extra boxes to collect any honey that might be surplus to their own needs. One of the reasons that the honeybees actually store honey in the hive is so that they can survive for the winter, which they'll do together as a colony, whereas bumblebees and wasps are both different in their life cycle. You may have noticed a bumblebee early in the year, say March or April, or a wasp, and noticed that it's really big, and that's because it's the queen. A bumblebee colony will collapse at the end of the year and it will only overwinter mated queens, whereas the honeybee colony, like this one here, they'll winter together as a colony, so come spring they're ready to start again with workers, stores and a queen all ready to go. Whereas a bumblebee colony, in March, April, the queen has to find a nest in sight, build the nest, go out, do the foraging and raise the young until she's got workers that can help. At the moment you can see they're all very spread out on the frame, but as the frosts start and they get into winter, they'll cluster together in a tight ball. The honeybee's able to disconnect her wings from her flight muscles, so she can flex her flight muscles without flapping her wings, and that allows them to produce heat in the cluster. So if they need heat they can produce it. If they need to cool down they're able to do that, and they've got the stored honey there that they're able to move around the hive and eat. Wasps do pollination work like a lot of the other pollinators, and also wasps eat young larvae of things like aphids, so there'd be a lot more pests damaging plants if there wasn't wasps there to eat their young. so that they do definitely have a place in the ecosystem. So one of the benefits of having the bees here is that if you think about a cherry tree, for example, the bees are going to go out and pollinate the cherry, which would look pink and look amazing anyway if it wasn't pollinated. But with it being pollinated, it goes on to produce cherries. Those cherries are then food for the birds, and as the birds eliminate the stones become feed for other things. So they fit in carrying out the pollination into the wider picture of the environment. So if you're thinking of keeping bees for yourself, it's a really good thing to do in a group, and we're lucky in the UK that we've got the British Beekeepers Association and the Welsh Beekeepers Association in Wales and the Scottish Beekeepers Association in Scotland, that are voluntary organisations but really help with advising on if it's a good place to keep them, running training courses that you can go on, advising on types of equipment and also management practices. It's not something that you'd really want to embark on your own. It's always better done with other people. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video as much as I've enjoyed having a look at the bees, and I'll be back when it's not raining.